If you've ever prepped for a JavaScript interview, you know that one question is almost guaranteed to come up. So, tell me about data types. It sounds super simple, right? But you'd be surprised how many developers get tripped up by it. In this explainer, we're going to break it all down piece by piece so you can absolutely nail this topic every single time.
So let's just dive right in with that classic question. How many data types are in JavaScript? You'd think it'd be a simple number, right? But if you Google it, you'll see answers all over the place. 5, 6, some people even say 8. It's kind of tricky. And that's because, spoiler alert, the number itself isn't really the answer they're looking for.
Exactly. See, the best answer you can give isn't just a number, it's showing you understand the concept. To really wow an interviewer, you don't just list off the types, you explain how JavaScript actually thinks about and stores data in memory. That, right there, is the real key.
So here's our game plan. We're going to tackle that classic question first. Then we'll get into the most important distinction, primitive versus reference types. After that, we'll take a quick tour of all the primitives, understand the reference types, and then, oh yeah, we'll master the type of operator test before wrapping up with a final challenge to make sure it all sticks. Okay, so let's get back to that classic question and tackle it head on. Just forget all those random numbers you've heard, 5, 7, whatever. According to the official documentation, and really the most useful way to think about it, there's a much simpler and way more powerful way to classify them. And this is that key insight I was talking about. Officially, JavaScript groups every single data type into just 2 main categories. And it's not random. It's based entirely on a single principle: how that piece of data gets stored in your computer's memory and how your code gets to access it. So what are those 2 categories? Well, they're called primitive types and reference types. I promise you, once you really get the core difference between these two, everything else about JavaScript data types is just going to click into place. And here it is, the fundamental difference right here on the screen. Primitives are what we call passed by value. This means whenever you assign or pass a primitive, you're creating a completely new, totally independent copy. But reference types, they're passed by reference. You're not actually passing the data, you're just passing a pointer. Think of it like a shortcut or a signpost that points to where the original data lives in memory. All right, so let's take a tour of that first category, the 7 primitive types. Just remember, as we go through these, every single one of them gets copied. They're all passed by value. First up, you've got the big 3. These are the ones you're probably using all day, every day. We've got string for any kind of text, number for, well, any number, integers, decimals, doesn't matter. And of course, Boolean for simple true or false values. Pretty straightforward and totally essential. Okay, next up is a pair that trips up a lot of people. Null versus undefined. The key difference here is all about intent. Null is something you do on purpose. It's an intentional, explicit assignment of no value. You, the developer, put it there. On the other hand, undefined is just the default state of things. It's what JavaScript gives a variable when it's been declared, but you haven't given it a value yet. Now for a more modern one, symbol. The whole reason symbol exists is to create a value that is absolutely 100% guaranteed to be unique. This is super useful for more advanced stuff, like creating unique property keys on objects so you never have to worry about them accidentally clashing. And this right here shows you why they're so powerful. Check out this code. We make 2 different symbols, and we give them the exact same description, the string 123. But when we try to compare them, the result is false. Why? Because every single time you call symbol, you are generating a brand new, completely unique value, no exceptions. And the last primitive on our tour is big int. This was brought in to handle numbers that are just ridiculously massive, ways too big for the normal number type to handle without losing precision. We're talking huge numbers you might see in scientific computing or high finance. And using it is super easy. You just slap an n onto the end of the number. All right, that's it for the 7 primitives. So let's shift gears and move on to our second and final category, reference types, which you'll sometimes hear called non-primitives. And what's the one thing we need to remember about these? They are all passed by reference. Now, this category is small, but man, is it powerful. It's basically made up of 3 things: arrays, which are for ordered lists of data, objects for your key value collections, and functions. You know, people often say that to truly master JavaScript, you have to master objects and functions. They're pretty much the building blocks for everything else you do in the language. So now that we know all the types,
how do we actually check what type of data we're working with in our code? Well, that brings us to the type of operator. And this isn't just a handy tool, it's also the source of some of the most classic JavaScript interview gotcha questions out there. Okay, let's put it to the test, and I mean it. This is probably the single most famous type of question you will ever be asked in an interview. You ready? What is the result of type of null? Go on, think about it for a second. Logically, you'd think the answer should be null, right? Well, that's not what you get. The answer is object. Yep, type of null returns the string object. This is, without a doubt, the most famous quirk in the entire JavaScript language. So what's going on here? Why does it do that? Well, the short answer is it's a bug. A bug that's been there since the literal first version of JavaScript. And it was never fixed because, at this point, changing it would break like half the internet. Knowing that little piece of history, that's what tells an interviewer you really know your stuff, that you've dug deeper than just the surface level. Think of this table as your little cheat sheet for the type of operator. Most of these make perfect sense, right? Boolean gives you Boolean, string gives you string, and so on. But you got to remember the special cases. Null, as we just saw, famously returns object. And look at function. It returns function, even though technically a function is just a special kind of object. Phew, okay, we have covered a lot of ground here. We started with a simple, kind of confusing question, and now we have a much deeper conceptual way of looking at it. So let's tie it all together with a quick summary and one final challenge for you. So, if you only remember 3 things from all of this, make it these 3. 1, don't just list data types, categorize them by how they're stored in memory, primitive versus reference. 2, primitives get copied, but references get shared. That's a huge deal. And 3, know your type of results cold, especially that infamous bug with null. And that brings us to our final thought. You now know what happens when you check the type of null. So your challenge, should you choose to accept it, is to go find out the nitty-gritty technical reason why. Seriously, digging into that bit of programming history won't just make you a better developer, it'll make you absolutely unstoppable in your next JavaScript interview.